Good morning, Boroda, Arthur Turner Udui. This is my fourth session of a series of sessions made available to you through the Professional Development Centre Limited on behalf of TUC Cymru, and is here to give you support around the current pandemic, COVID-19, and to give you much needed kind of ideas and support around these areas. Okay, I'm just going to share the screen with you so that you can get an idea of what we're going to cover today. Firstly, I'm just going to go into what is coaching. The subject for today is self-coaching. So I just want to cover a few of the core principles around coaching itself. I want to see if we can answer some of these questions. How can you help yourself? What are good coaching questions? How do you self-coach? Coach yourself? How do you translate this thought into action? And what can you learn from self-coaching? Okay, you've already heard from my colleagues around the ideas of change, some change theories, and also from Sally, my colleague, talking about how to dispel negative thoughts. Well, this is a bit of self-improvement, I guess, is what we're trying to say. First of all, the coaching, executive coaching, coaching organizations is a really key part of development currently. It has been a trend for maybe 20 years, maybe. And this gives you an idea of its power and its relevance in organizations, because organizations wouldn't use it unless it was effective. And the core skills are around very much human skills, really, building rapport, helping someone consider their issues through questioning, through careful use of silence, not giving answers, but just asking questions, and really thinking about the way in which you might take some action around a particular issue, so you're not stuck in frozen in one place, as it were. So what is self-coaching? So the idea is that you can think about a particular issue. So again, we could try this, I guess. In the materials we've given you on the as an adjunct to this presentation, you'll be able to see some example questions. But for instance, so think about an issue. Usually it's really good to think about an issue or a problem or a challenge, maybe in 3 sentences. Is a very useful kind of method. You might want to write it down. You can also draw it, I guess. And when you've got this issue or challenge in your mind, you might start to think about questions. So we're not talking about the kind of ordinary questions that people might ask you. What are you going to do about that? Or why is it happening? Which can feel a bit accusatory, if that's the right word. But to think of it more clearly about questions that might be. So what would your best friend do about this? When have you tackled something similarly with success? What might be a different way of looking at this? What would Nelson Mandela say about your issue? And so on, so that you begin to cultivate the idea of asking questions. Now, the best way to do, sometimes maybe you write down a list of questions. We've given you a sample in the material that's with you. Or it might be to ask yourself some questions and write them down, and then choose 2 or 3 you really like that really helped. And these questions will be in your mind mixed with your issue and your problem, your challenge, and get you to a place where perhaps you consider it differently. I also like to use creative questions, 3-word questions, 2-word questions. You might even consider, if my issue was an animal, which animal it would be and why. So use your creative mind as well as your literal and linear mind. Now, what we hope to be able to talk to you about is about not just leaving it there, so thinking about some action you might take. Now, having sorted out the problems, you might want to perhaps do what we suggested in some of my other sessions, particularly at the moment, doing your daily exercise, getting out, thinking about walking and thinking, about how to take some action, but also taking some inspiration from nature and the way nature deals with challenges and issues and problems, you know. So daisies on the lawn, if it's regularly cut, respond to that challenge by growing shorter stems to their flowers, as a kind of example. But to not leave it as there as a thought process, but as a kind of comeback, and maybe in a notebook, write some action. Now, that action doesn't have to be grand. It has to be world-shattering, but it could be something to do with, okay, on Monday I'm going to phone so-and-so. On next week I'm going to try and do my Pilates session 3 times a week rather than just once a week or not at all. So that you begin to develop this sort of self-awareness, this kind of reflective process that will give you some impetus and some energy around helping you tackle your own problems and issues. Okay, we'll just return you to the screen to show you, remind you what we've covered. And we think this self-coaching is a good way of helping yourself. Good coaching questions are ones that make you think, make you sit back. They're not suggestions about what to do. They are things that say, oh, I hadn't really thought of it like that. How do you self-coach? Well, as we suggested, you can make a list of questions. You could identify ones you really like. You could get a friend to give you a set of questions. But all of this would be generated without advice, without offering a solution. You can translate this into action by doing some different things. Maybe drawing your issue out, asking a critical friend, for example, perhaps going for a walk, or, as I suggested, taking some inspiration from the way nature meets its challenges, particularly this, the wettest June on record, looks like, and then followed by or preceding the driest May. So how does nature cope with those sort of things? And what can you learn from self-coaching? Well, you can learn that you are you have your own solutions within you, and that you can, without redress to books or an expert, actually work your way through ways in which you meet life's challenges. Okay, so once again, it's been a real pleasure working with you on this session. I wish you all the best in the future. Poblach i chi gyd yn y dyfodol. It's been great to work with you. Hwyl fawr, da boch.